I'm Amira, and this is Same Same But Different. If you've enjoyed the series so far and want to see more episodes, please give me a huge thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for your support. Love you. Hi everybody, we're back. I'm Amira. This is Same Same But Different, and today we have Mohammed Mamdouh. Mo, welcome to the series. So, to start off with, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I grew up in Dubai, Fujairah to be specific, and spent the last 30 years in this country that I pretty much call home. I'm originally from Egypt, but I've never lived there. And yeah, I mean, my friends, my whole life's been here. I'm a filmmaker by night. I'm a brand director by day.
Okay.
So switch between different roles in the film industry, depending on what's needed when and what's possible when. And yeah, I mean, I did my master's in the US, and I studied film. I did an MFA in film, and I made about 14 short films. I've written a feature screenplay that's traveling right now all across the US, and yeah, I mean, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
What were the first memories of you knowing that this was really what you wanted to do?
So there's a couple. There's one of me redubbing The Lion King and playing all the characters and doing all the voices of all the different Simba and Mufasa and Timon.
That's adorable.
Like a director's cut of The Lion King. So that was the first one. My dad helped me figure out the technicalities of that because I was really young.
Okay.
But after that, I just started playing with my toys and sort of not recognizing the accident of stop motion animation.
Okay.
And record on a camera and watching your toys move.
Yeah.
And as soon as I did that, I got into it. And very shortly after that, I made my first film in high school, but it wasn't complete. It was just one scene of a friend of mine getting murdered at on his way to a party by the guy with the scream mask, and that was pretty much it. And then it just ends.
Oh, great.
So there's all these little experiments along the way where I didn't really recognize that it was filmmaking. I didn't have a word for it. I didn't know what a director was, but I knew that I had this instinct to kind of make things with a camera. And it wasn't until I went to college that I started to actually make movies.
Okay.
And that's when it kind of took off. Like until then, it was kind of like a pipe dream, like something in my mind that I talk about out loud, but isn't really tangible. And then as soon as I got into college, freshman year, I made my first film, and it did horribly. Didn't get accepted to a single festival. Then I made my second and third together, and both of them got accepted to multiple festivals, got shortlisted, and won things. And that was kind of like a massive turnaround that kind of got me to feel confident to pursue this.
To get shortlisted, what does that mean?
So what happens is when you make a movie, let's say a short film, there are websites that are available that sort of catalog all the film competitions around the world.
Okay.
What you can do is then write in the details of your film, upload it, and send it to all these festivals. Some of them are free, some of them have a fee. And what happen is the really good ones select your film. When we're not in a pandemic world, you get to screen in a cinema and maybe win an award for your film. And if you win one of the big festivals, which is Sundance or Cannes, up getting your next film funded by a major studio. So that's kind of like the dream. Quentin Tarantino had to start that way with Reservoir Dogs. It was discovered out of a film festival, Sundance. So there's a few directors who had their starts at film festivals. That's kind of like your seal of approval that you're a serious filmmaker.
Okay, that's interesting. And so from the beginning on, did you know that you wanted to make specifically short films, or was it kind of just the
No,
way
I mean,
it happened?
I always wanted to make feature films,
Okay.
definitely. But the reality is that if you start wanting to make a feature film, you're not going to make a feature film. You're going to make something really bad because it's just a lot of work and it takes
I can imagine.
develop. And that's if you have the money, it takes years. If you don't have the budget, which is in the millions of dollars at minimum to make the most
Mhm.
basic professional film, then you're looking at a pretty impossible task. So shorts make it possible for you to see your result as a filmmaker, and you're able to learn really quickly and improve because getting the funding for that together can be as simple as starting with your friends and your family and then working your way out of that circle as your reputation grows as a filmmaker and people
Mhm.
trust you and they know you're capable. You start to get models, and then from models you find actors, and then ultimately once you find a producer, and a producer is the sort of logistical person on a movie set who takes care of all the non well he is a creative as well. I don't want to say it's an uncreative part, but a lot of the logistics of what happens on a movie, who gets paid, and who
Mhm.
brings everybody together, um, report those people report into a producer.
Okay.
Um, and so once I started doing that professionally about 5 or 6 years ago, then it
Mhm.
became a lot easier, and I started to work with actors who have credits to their names. Started to work with, I don't know, like for example, one of the shorts I did was shot by the cinematographer of the Saw franchise.
Wow.
Uh, so once and he's a great cinematographer, and now he's not even a cinematographer. He's actually a Hollywood director. So he's directed
Okay.
films. So once you start getting those credits and those sort of, I guess, not just Hollywood, but even global actors involved in your work, things change.
Mhm.
Uh, and you start to basically be able to attract the right type of talent. And it becomes about the material. And if you're not a writer director, in my case, I'm a writer director right now,
Mhm.
then it's even more difficult. Then it just becomes about your portfolio. And many directors shoot a lot of commercials in order to qualify as a film director. Ridley Scott is the most famous of them.
Yeah, I don't think it's something that the viewers really realize because we just get the final product and I don't think we understand how much has gone into that and how much work and how much just effort um, goes into it.
Yeah, there's hundreds and hundreds of people behind the scenes working on a film. I mean, when I was in college, I got to intern on Mission Impossible, and they were shooting in Dubai.
Did
Uh,
you?
yeah, and I mean that was like a 600 production crew just in Dubai for the Dubai
Wow.
shoot.
Okay.
So there's just a lot of work that goes into it,
Mhm.
from art department to the production design, the makeup, the special effects.
Wow. Yeah.
Just
Mhm.
so much going on. I mean, you're essentially creating a canvas.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
your canvas is reality, so it gets very tricky to control that.
Mhm.
Uh, it's not really yours; it's shared by humanity. So you're
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of
Mhm.
stopping things constantly, and that costs money to stop. A very famous scene that comes to mind is Vanilla Sky with Tom Cruise.
Mhm.
The opening scene. The reason it comes to mind is because of this whole COVID-19 thing,
Yeah.
all the streets being empty. And for that opening sequence, they had to, I think, pay quite a bit of money to lock down Times Square and have Tom Cruise run around it screaming and then waking up from that nightmare. And I've been thinking a lot about it just because of the fact that it could be so easy to do it right now with all the streets
Oh,
empty.
yeah. What is your writing process? Like, what is the process that you go through? Do you start with an idea that you already have? Do you have like a theme that you know you want to explore, or how exactly does it work for you?
I mean, yeah, for me, it's thematic and it's inspiration, but it also depends what it's for. Do you know what I mean? Like because
Yeah.
I write and direct commercials and films. It depends what it's for. So if it's a commercial, it's a totally different process than a movie.
I imagine, yeah.
That you're promoting a product, but basically it always starts with a strong feeling that I get about a story. It could be a moment in a story that catches my attention. It could be the outcome of the story. So, for example, but most of the stories that I've written come from news articles. So it's something that I've read that really me and I can't get it out of my head. And then start building sort of fantasy narratives around that. There'd be like a story that I hear from a friend. It doesn't have to be a newspaper, but newspapers just tend to be my first source. And then I sort of fill in the blanks. So I'd hear people talking about inheritance in the Arab world, and that would sort of stay with me, like friends who are dealing with inheritance issues within their families. And then I'd find it so fascinating how specific those situations are and unique. Yeah. So I'd sort of store it in my long-term memory, but not do anything with it. And then I'd read a story about a tragedy that happened in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or wherever, where someone, like fell out of a window or whatever. And that story would kind of stay with me. And then over time, the creative process would mix all those things together into an. So I'd end up with pretty much unrelated things that become one story. So I had been really curious about sort of astral dreams and astral traveling, and how that's like very serious science that people take very seriously in the US. And there's like a whole institute called the Monroe Institute where they just listen to brain waves on headphones and try to sort of hallucinate that they're leaving their bodies into a different plane.
No way. Okay.
Yeah, so all those topics seem unrelated, but then I kind of sat down and I was like, what if we tell a story about a young Egyptian girl who lost her family in a tragic accident. Her baby sister fell out of a window, and she has to deal with the trauma of losing part of her family. And in essence, has to make a decision to live or die. It's that she's so depressed and so lost in her grief that she has very little reason to feel alive anymore. And she kind of has to make the decision to choose to be alive. And when she goes to sleep, she sees her dead family in this astral plane. So those things that are unrelated suddenly start to feel very fluid. And that's been traveling now for about a year in the US. Again, the same thing, but this time it's not a movie, it's a script, because it's a feature film, it's not a short.
But I find that amazing, because it's basically, like you say, taking pieces of reality, tragic events that have really happened, and then kind of making them your own, because there is no rule book saying that you have to write a script with this. You kind of have the creativity to do with it whatever you want, and that's amazing. That's what makes it yours at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. I think you have to find the thing that draws you, and that's what writing about, because writing is so tedious. Like if you aren't, especially with a feature film, because shorts you can write in a week or two, but a feature, to get it to the level that you need for you to feel confident to actually make it, it just takes so many hours. So if you're not inspired by the material, if it's not something that strikes a really deep chord that you can look at for 2 years and not get bored, then it's not going to work out. Like my process is also really messy. Like I wrote this story entirely differently about 11 times from different from different perspectives of characters, and then even the plot points of the story changed depending on what was happening around me at the time, because it was really impacting my perception. So I mean, there's a lot of things. But that's just my process. A lot of writers are more, organized and structured, and tend to actually have, their outline cards all spread out across the wall. And so a narrative structure has 3 acts. You've got your first act is the introduction to the protagonist's world, which is knowing where you are and, feeling a sense of space and time, characters, and then the middle kind of like when things get really difficult and all the obstacles kind of hammer up on top, and you kind of have to make a decision: do I give up, or do I stand up and fight? And then Act 3 is the resolution of that conflict. It's kind of like what actually happens. Things get really bad, but then you overcome or you don't. So that's the most simplistic way of summarizing it. But my scripts, my feature film wasn't having that structure. Like I was trying so hard to be original that it ended up having this weird structure that essentially just depresses you because you don't end up having that sense of relief at the end of your investment as a viewer. You just take the viewer through a roller coaster journey of emotion, and viewers need to be rewarded for that roller coaster. And at the end of my first draft, you just felt like the statement was, there is no hope. And then when I got asked why I was telling this story, I kept saying the statement that there is always hope. So I was contradicting myself, not realizing I was doing it. But I think what's really important when you're thinking about narrative structure is the journey that you take the viewer on. So for example, if your ending is sad, then it has to be started in a really upbeat place for it to end in a really sad place, for you to feel invested. And I mean, the most simple way of explaining this, Robert McKee, who is a storytelling instructor, said this, smacked on the table and everyone looked up, and he said, story is change. You see how your mind focuses on story?
Rejection is something very common, can be very common. How do you get over rejection? Like, it must affect you, at least in the beginning.
Yeah, I think at the start, rejection is can kill you. Like if you don't have the perseverance to sort of realize that this is what you were put on this earth to do. And it doesn't matter if you don't actually achieve it. What matters is that you're always yearning and chasing after it. If you're doing that, then you feel a sense of absolute purpose. And if you feel that, okay, that's step one. Just coming to terms with, I don't care if I get the Oscar. That is what I want, but I don't care if I get it, because I'm after the chase. I'm after actually the journey. It's
not only like I don't care if I get it, I'm in for the chase, but also if I don't get it, it doesn't mean that I am crap. It doesn't mean that I'm not worthy. It just means that for the moment, it's not the plan, and just keep going, because maybe one day you will get that Oscar.
So rejection does not mean that your self-worth is being invalidated as a storyteller. They're very different things. And I think a lot of the time, the reason why people feel like their self-worth is impacted is because art is such a personal thing. Like, if you're going to spend 2 years writing a script about something you care about, and it gets rejected, you start to feel that your point of view on, or perspective on life on earth doesn't matter, it's irrelevant. It's really important to realize that there's actually a politics and a business to breaking in. And it's like you said, it's about being at the right place at the right time with the right culture globally that would appeal to your story. So to give you a perfect example, so this script now has gotten shortlisted at 7 festivals around the globe. Before that, there were even Hollywood producers who had read it and had said wonderful things about it, but passed on it. When I asked, I got lucky that they actually explained why they passed on it.
Okay.
And that, you don't always get that. And that's kind of when you realize it has nothing to do with me.
Yeah, it's not personal.
It's not personal, no. They are making a specific type of film that is commercially viable. And because my film has specific types of material, make it. And that can, again, the reason why I say it's political and it's business is because if you show any element of underage violence, underage suicide, all those things Netflix shows on 13 Reasons Why and whatnot, all of that could never show in a theater without an R rating. Studios would kind of steer away from a big budget script from an unknown filmmaker that deals with R-rated material because it's a huge financial risk. Doesn't mean the script's not good.
Do you feel you need the ending of the story before you start writing it, or can you kind of make it up as you go?
I want to just say there's no right or wrong in storytelling and writing.
Of course,
there isn't.
Of course.
So in my specific experience, I don't need to have my ending. I have an idea of where I'm going, but not necessarily going to stay there. The reason I say that is because I knew that there was a very specific image that I wanted my film to end with.
Okay.
It came about in my fourth or fifth draft. And while it took another 20 or 30 drafts to get the film finished,
Wow.
that did stay from the third or fourth draft till the 30th draft.
How do you deal with writer's block?
The way it works for me is I work really well under pressure.
Okay.
So if I have 2 days to write a script, I tend to just sit and not sleep for 2 days and literally just all of it comes out nonstop, coffee, staying up all night. And then literally like at the end of the 2 nights, I'm exhausted and I just pass out.
Yeah.
I think the writer of Big Fish, John August, I think that's his name, said is that he gets stuck writing a scene,
Okay.
but it is a different scene that he knows what happens in that next scene. So when he has writer's block, he just moves on and doesn't write in order and moves on to that scene, writes it. And whenever he gets stuck again, he goes to the next scene that he knows the events of that scene and just keeps writing the plot for the stuff that he feels that there's a flow in. And he doesn't write in order. And that's this process, and he likes to write standing up. He can't write sitting down because it owns his focus.
So then what makes your scripts and your films, shorts or features, whatever, what makes them yours?
So I think there's a combination of different things. One is that I'm definitely someone who considers himself a mix of so many different experiences and culture, having grown up in Dubai and Fujairah, but having been, from Egypt and doing my graduate degree in the US and being constantly in between cultures, definitely has a strange sense of displacement that's actually quite positive, not negative.
Okay.
Positive displacement. I mean, it sounds weird to say out loud, but having that experience really informs the type of stories I tell. I've never written a script that isn't bilingual in some element or another, or doesn't necessarily shy away from acknowledging the fact that we live in a world that has multiple languages and multiple identities and culture, and cultural norms are not one way or another. There are things. So that's kind of the worlds where my stories take place in. And someone else can look at it and say, these movies are very cultureless, like there's no sense of culture in them because nobody seems to belong to a specific place. Why do you have Arabs who are speaking in English? So it's a very weird, for example, thing to see when you're from a specific place and you don't have the context of growing up in this part of the world. It doesn't necessarily make sense on first glance. If you think about it, like people in New York, even though they're from all around the world, and they're not from somewhere specific, they all identify once they live there as Americans, right?
Yeah,
so it's quite different. It's slightly different when you're basing a film out in the UAE. You kind of still maintain your own identity, but you're also a part of this global identity in this global city.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Just to chill out, I guess. Very intense, and things get better, so just chill.
What motto do you live by?
I'm gonna cheat because I have them written down somewhere. The sweet is never as sweet without the sour.
Ooh, deep. I like that.
I mean, to a screenwriter, it's perfect, right? Because it's conflict. It's everything, really, right? And it's about being okay with embracing pain and knowing that you're going to come out the other side, not just stronger, but closer to who you're supposed to actually be.
Right. And finally, what are you proudest of in your life?
Being an educator really changed my life. So I'm a filmmaker, yes, and that's my passion, but I got the opportunity to teach film at the university. And the reaction of seeing 100 faces light up when you share a piece of film magic, and then watch those, I don't know, I feel even weird calling them kids because they're just a few years younger than me, but just watching them kind of discover their own passion.
Yeah.
Was so overwhelming. I mean, it was a moment that I will never forget, because basically I'm trying to make a movie and there's 100 people now trying to make a movie.
Yeah.
And that kind of influence is just so inspiring. I mean, the thing that pushed me even more towards that moment of like pure inspiration was watching kids who were engineers, kids who were architecture majors, who were not into film, who were just in the chorus because they thought it was an easy pass, because it's a film. Kind of come out of it thinking that this is something they seriously would consider, and they would actually consider looking back at their free electives and so on, and reprioritizing film as something they want to pursue further.
So thank you so much for being here today. I think really it's so many interesting stories, so many interesting insights, great advice. Really, thank you so much. And all the best, and we look forward to seeing and hearing much more from you and seeing those movies become reality.
Thank you. Yeah, no, definitely. Red carpet premiere coming soon.
Yep, I'll be waiting for my invitation. All right, Mo, thanks so much. Have a good night. Thank you.